Hello, hello, blissful parents. Michelle Abraham, your host here. Today, I am so excited, you guys. I have a fabulous guest for you today. We're talking to Lynn Teatro. Hey, Lynn, how are you today?
I'm great, Michelle. How are you?
I'm so good. Blissful parents, let me tell you a little bit more about Lynn. She is the college confidence coach, and we're super excited to have you here. Now, don't panic. I know your kids are a little bit far off from college yet, but what we're going to share today is going to help you set your kids up for success for their college years and their high school years. Lynn recognized that one of the most important things in life is to be able to self-advocate, and adults who have in life anxiety or and haven't been able to speak up for themselves, often looking back, weren't really great at school and they weren't really living up to their full potential and in their zone of genius. So Lynn is really great at helping parents and students who are struggling get back on the right path, maybe re-enroll in college, and maybe they've dropped out and now they're going back to college, but setting them up with a plan for success. And she is also the host of the Facebook Live called My Voice Counts Too, the Parents Edition. So Lynn, we're super excited to have you here with us today, sharing your brilliance with our parents. And I know the college year seemed a little far off for some of our parents, but believe me, it comes up quicker than you think. So Lynn, share with us first, like how did you become the college confidence coach?
Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was after my mother passed away. We've had a lot of deaths in my family, and we tend to not live very long. So my mom passed away at 88, and I thought, well, I guess I've got 22 years. What am I going to do with them? And I worked in social services throughout my life. But one of the things that I did for myself, which was a really, really good thing, one of the best things I did was to go back to high school, back to my little rural country high school with the 17 and 18-year-olds as a 30-year-old mom of two, and complete and upgrade my grade 13. So that's how long it was. It was, back when grade 13 was a thing, and then applied as a college or a high school graduate. And going through the process, it's anxiety provoking, and to get in is huge. And then when I got in, I learned that 30% of students drop out in their first year. That's a huge, huge loss. It's a loss of money for one thing, but it's a loss of brilliance, not only for the student, but for the future of our planet. We need every person to find their zone of genius and work that so that they can be fulfilled, and that we heal this planet of all the strife that it's going through. So we need people as educated and as self-knowledgeable as possible.
Right.
And
yeah, I can imagine like getting set up, going to college, and then dropping out soon after. Wow, that's expensive. And also like, oh gosh, like, that's something that they could be so brilliant at, something they've just found what they were interested in. I know that's what helped me stay in college, is because I waited till I was older to find something I was interested in. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and the teachers tend to call it engagement. Mm-hmm. But what it is being able to speak up for yourself. In high school, there's 30 students in the class. In university, you sit in the class and there's 300 students in the class. So if your kid's the type that sits in the back of the class so that the teacher doesn't call on you, the back of the class in university is a whole different thing. And they get lost. And the teacher has 300 students in that class and probably two other classes that they're teaching that have 300 students. So the teacher's not going to tap your child on the shoulder and say, hey, where's your assignment? It was supposed to be handed in. And if there's a legitimate reason for handing that assignment in, and you're shy and anxious, you don't say, hey, I've been sick for the last 3 days and I couldn't get it completed. Could I have a bit of an extension? They're not going to do that. Or if they don't understand something, they're not going to stand up and say, I'm really not getting this. Mm-hmm. So they fall behind. And fall behind and fall behind until the point it's just like, there's no point in them trying to go on. So self-advocacy is huge.
Absolutely. Now I want to go back to your story a little bit. What inspired you to go back to high school as a mom and at 30?
Well, again, I didn't do it overnight. I was raised on a farm, and I was raised to complete high school, to get married and have kids. And I did exactly what was expected of me. Was not a happy camper. My marriage broke up. Um, I was working in women's wear and doing really, really good job, and I really enjoyed it, but was still wasn't satisfied. So I was driving by my old high school and just kind of drove right in the parking lot and asked if somebody could tell me how to get to university. And I was sent to the guidance counselor, and they said, well, we just started our semester. We're doing semesters now. Mm-hmm. You could probably catch up. So why don't you start tomorrow? So I did.
Wow. Not much time to think about that. Just jump right into it.
And that's the way I tend to work. I'm one of those kinds of people. You know, it's just when I decide to do it, I decide to do it.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, so for our parents that are, got school age kids now, maybe they're getting older and going into high school soon. What are some things that we can help our kids do to prepare for a little bit more success getting into high school and then beyond into college, so that they're not one of the dropouts that's a huge percentage of dropouts in college, right? And do you think that's mostly like because parents are like forcing their kids to go to college and they don't really necessarily want to go? Or what do you think is causing that a huge amount of dropouts?
There's various things. There's life skills. Mm-hmm. If you send your kids off to college and they don't know how to recognize what foods are healthy for them, if they don't know how to do laundry, if they don't know, if they've always had those things done for them, it's going to stress them out in terms of college. They're not going to make good choices for themselves. So the first thing I would suggest is start your kids doing household chores and learning these things before they realize it isn't fun.
Start adulting, getting them to do some adulting things when it's still fun.
Well, yeah, because it's not like, oh, you turn 18 and automatically things switch on.
Right.
It's make chores part of their routine and make it known that they are needed to do this and you are needed to do that, and everybody fulfills their own role. And ask them what's the things that they like to do, and they can have those chores first. And then there's always the ones that nobody wants to do. And so, let's take turns doing those. But
for those ones, I actually just picked up a really cool little thing at a women's expo a few weeks ago. And it was a dice with all the different chores on it, so they could roll the dice. It was made out of wood. It was made out of wood, and it's quite big. And they could roll the dice to get whichever chore they got, which I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and you can make it fun. You can make it a challenge. You do this chore, you do this chore, and you do this chore, and I'm going to do this. And it'll take about half an hour for each of us, and then we'll get together and we'll play a board game together, or we will go out for a bike ride, or we will, but we're not going to be doing that until the chores are done.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. And I feel like when kids feel like if you enlist them and like they feel like they're helping in some way instead of just being told to do something, I feel like that also works with my kids anyways. If I ask them for their help in doing something and accomplishing something, makes them feel like more inclined to argue about it. They're part of the household. There's part of the decision making too. And so when they're making decisions like grocery shopping, what are we going to make for meals this week? Let's go in and check labels and things to figure out what the price is, getting involved in that sort of thing, and then putting the groceries away and preparing meals. And if you've got a good sized kitchen, it is fun to prepare meals together. Put on some good music and dance and sing and chop and stir, and it's fun. Yes, it sounds like a fun dinner time routine for sure.
Yeah, and that's another thing is having regular sit down at the table, no devices, no television. Let's talk. Let your child speak up at the table, making their voice count there, and find out, what went well that day, what was a downer if you had any, and then what was just kind of interesting, what was things that you observed that was neither good nor bad, but it piqued your interest.
Yeah. This is some good questions. It's almost like I would love to see like someone make a deck of cards that would be like good dinner time conversations for families, like what conversation starters, right? Something like that would be so cool to help the conversation in the dinner table. Sometimes like so short answers.
Well, what you can do is table topics is a big popular thing with Toastmasters.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can Google table topics, and
Mm-hmm.
there's lists and lists and lists of them. So what you can do is find some lists that resonate with you, print them off, cut them into slips, and put them in a jar or in a bowl, and just grab one.
Good idea. Mm-hmm. We also played the game. We played the game, the rose and thorn too. So like,
Mm-hmm.
what was a rose today, and what was a thorn today? So that we kind of like sometimes like we would hear like the thorn and be like, I had no idea that happened. Like, oh, thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask and you don't listen, you are missing so much of who your child is.
Mm-hmm. Especially as your kids get older too. I've noticed my kids really talk a lot as their heads are hitting the pillow. And I know my kids are getting older now where that's not going to be for very much longer that I'm going to be able to like
No.
capture those conversations right before I'm allowed to lay down with them still, but not for very much longer, I'm sure. They're going to grow out of that sooner than we can think. So other ways to like maybe help your kids become more independent, or like you mentioned something about being in their zone of genius. How can we help support our kids to figuring out what their zone of genius is and living in their kind of potential?
Well, there's a quick and dirty way of doing it, and that is getting a Colby Index assessment done with your child.
Okay.
The Colby is not an IQ test, and it's not a personality test. It's an assessment of how that individual tackles problems.
Mm.
And there's 4 different areas of doing that. And actually, she should be one of a friend of mine. Her name's Gail Swift, and she does that. And she would be dynamite on your show to talk about zone of genius. But there's 4 of them. There's initiating is one area. Researching is another area. Following through is another area. And I can't remember that 4th one, but I'm one of those that really high on the initiation stuff, really high on the research stuff, and the other 2, the follow through.
Oh, I think I'm right there with you, Lynn. I think this. I was just looking at that. I'm like, oh yeah, the follow
From
through
grade
one's not for
1,
me.
Lynn does not finish her homework.
Right.
But I can do it, and I can do it fast. But then that was the having the ideas and getting them down on paper, but finishing it and handing it in was my weakness. So
I finished it and handed it in, but like at like the 11th hour.
I slid them underneath the prof's door.
Yeah.
And I got marked. So see, I did my undergrad degree in 3-year undergrad degree in 2 years.
Wow.
With 2 kids, and I was pregnant with my 3rd for the last one.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yep. So yeah, I lost marks because I was handing things, and I still came out with a B+ average.
Right. That's good.
And then part of that was because I had to be responsible for my kids. So I chose courses that happened during the day, so that I left when they left on the bus in the morning and came home in time to cook meals and spend dinner with them. And then I'd sit down at the table and do my homework, and they would sit down at the table and do their homework too.
That's great. That was really good modeling too for them.
Well, it was
good students too. Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. You can't expect your kid to go to college if you never went to college. It's never too late to go back, or never too late to start. So I'm the first person in my mom's family, my father's family, and my stepfather's family to complete high school, let alone to go on to post-secondary school.
Yeah. Wow, that's a huge accomplishment. Good for you. And I'm sure you set like a really great example for your kids then too.
Well, they've done it differently though. My daughter just graduated. She's 42. She went back as a single parent as well. My granddaughter did it differently. She's a chef, and she didn't go to a standard post-secondary school education. She went out west and learned and worked at the same time, and came back with great skills, and she's putting them to great use, and she's a marvelous cook.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think that's helpful for kids like thinking about college is to find something that they're like really interested in, but also like build skills too? Like, you think that's better than just getting a bachelor's degree and getting something that's like got a skill or vocational something attachment?
Well, un unless they picked up a job in high school,
Hmm.
the only thing that they know that they can do is study and read and do
Hmm.
papers and participate in sports. So sometimes those skills that you learn and the opportunities that you learn are better done in work and getting employment. So, you don't have to, there's no rule that says you have to immediately go to college or university right out of high
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
And if you're not sure what it is you want to do, and it's not about what you want to do for the rest of your life anymore, because new jobs are being developed every day. When I grew up, and I'm talking like an old person, when I grew up, the only women's jobs that I saw were nurses and teachers. And we still got nurses and teachers, but there's so many other jobs out there. There was no, there was no personal, there was no personal coaching once upon a time. There was no massage therapists once upon a time. There were no physiotherapists. Like, it's all these jobs have been developed, and there's technology. I mean, the way technology has changed, and that world has opened up huge. And all of these things are as accessible to women as what they are to men, because they didn't get labeled, pink and blue when they were
Right.
conceived. So yeah, get out and get some life experience. The other thing as a parent is to introduce your children to people who are working in diverse industries. And if you don't know them, you can still say, hey, I'd like my child to learn a little bit about this. Can we meet with you over a coffee?
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that would be really helpful. I would see, really helpful for kids to kind of, or go to school, go to work with the parent, or go check
Mm-hmm.
out different things that are going on. I was invited to be a part of a police academy camp in grade 11 because I was interested in becoming a police officer. And so they chose one student from every school in our district. And we went out to the army base and did a police academy, and it was
Mm-hmm.
crazy. It was good. It definitely it probably didn't do what it was supposed to do for me. I broke my leg on the second day and then got totally freaked out of becoming a police officer. This probably was not the intention of the whole program, but was to show kids what it would be like to be a police officer. And I know a lot of the kids that were at that camp with me did go on and take their police officer training, and that was really great for them. Not so great for me, but it showed that that wasn't the right career for me. But I am grateful that my parents also recognized that I didn't need to go to college right away. The college program that I was really interested in doing, I had to be a certain age to get into it. So I didn't qualify to get in for the first year after high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the opportunity to actually, my high school helped me find a job. And they found me a job as a nanny in Switzerland. So I was an au pair. So I went to Switzerland. I lived in a different country with a different family for a whole year before coming back and going to school. And to me, like that whole education year was fantastic. Like, I learned so much. I was learning a different language, living in a different country, in a different house, and I think it was just as valuable as going to school for for that year too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And travel, not the travel where all in one inclusive and stay at a resort, but travel where you're actually getting to experience the culture and talk to the people and check out the geography, all the things that make a different country a different country. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go out and do different and see different creatures, um, I'm a nature lover. I mean, I was raised on a 150-acre farm, and
Wow.
staying on the property had a different connotation than it does when you live in the city.
Right.
And I like bugs. Pulling weeds and getting a moth on my hand and looking at it and checking it out. I don't kill them. I check them out. Curiosity is another great thing to foster
Mm-hmm.
and demonstrate it yourself. So so different experiences, and that's where food comes back into it again. Is tasting different foods and checking out different vegetables, I've had plantain once and never knew what a mango was till I moved back to Peterborough. So yeah, it's showing that the world is this beautiful, big, diverse place, and there's somewhere in it that you belong.
That's beautiful. And I love that exposing our kids to as much as we can when they're young to helps them kind of, figure out what they like, what they don't like, and helps them kind of like develop their kind of sense of who they are too. Are there any other things like, should you recommend they take the Colby test, the kids, so they can kind of see what and then by taking the Colby test, and then knowing the answers, what then happens? What would you suggest that we do after that?
Well, it's how they tackle problems. So if they're allowed to tackle problems or encouraged to tackle problems in the way that they work, in the way that they're going to engage better than if you say, no, this is the way it should be done. And when I think about it, I was allowed to cut the grass once when I was a kid. And, there's, people tend to cut the grass, up and down and up and down. But no, I went all over the lawn and it drove my mom crazy. If she was smart, she would have just let me do it. And, I, as an older person, I sort of say, well, it's kind of a waste of gas and bad on the environment. But I was having fun. And if she let me finish it, the grass would have been all cut and it would have taken me longer. But, that was my choice. And so I was never allowed to cut the grass again. That was, my brother's job.
Letting kids experiment, even though it's not perfect the way we would do, like the laundry, right? I'm sure they can or stacking the dishwasher may not be the perfect way we would like to do them.
Well, have you ever seen anybody just turn on, just put their last dish in and shut the door and not rearrange things? If you probably your husband or your partner finishes the dish, puts the last dish in, and you'll come over and just shuffle things, because nobody ever leaves the dishwasher alone.
It's actually the other way around. I could care less how the dishes are in as long as they get clean, and my husband rearranges them how I put them in.
Exactly. There are no rules for most things. They're just, preferences and habits.
Right. So I love that. So so that brings us back to, really helping your kids prepare and stacking some good habits and exposing them to all sorts of different things and really helping them figure out who they are, expressing gratitude and all those things. Anything else, Lynn, that you can think that will help our parents today?
Focus on the good. We are all pre-wired to look at the mistakes, to look at that little fleck of, that little piece of dandruff on your dark coat, or the black stain on a fabric, or focus on the good and praise that. I think the biggest one is if a child shares with you something that is uncomfortable, thank them for telling you. You might not have wanted to hear it. It might not have been the best thing, but I think a lot of us cover up the flaws in ourselves because somebody doesn't like that. And so all those difficult subjects, if a child brings them up, thank them. Say, I'm glad you told me that, because we don't want our children keeping things to themselves if they need help.
Right. Especially if they're struggling. Yeah. Do you have a couple of indicators, even though our kids are, still school age, are there some indicators that we can see now that might actually give us a clue that we need to really pay attention to our kids' success in school as they get older?
Success is their responsibility. And so taking over and dictating.
You mean I should do their homework for them? Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding. I don't do that.
No. Sitting down and doing your paperwork or something at the table while they're doing their homework, so they're there if they're struggling and have questions or want to talk, is a good idea. But no, not doing homework for them. And figuring out where they do their homework best.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Because getting them in their room, maybe if they're like me, that's too distracting. My brain goes wild and I forget to do what I'm supposed to be doing. Whereas sitting down at the table where other people are working holds me somewhat accountable.
Interesting. Whereas it may actually distract other kids if there's other people around, talking or cooking dinner or whatever while they're trying to do their work too.
Yeah. So I know myself well enough now that I can work better at a restaurant or a coffee shop with my computer.
Block it out,
I can block that out and focus and get a lot of work done. But at home, there's always some distraction. Oh, maybe I should, put on the laundry, or maybe I should do this, or maybe I should. And kids are the same way. They're just figure out where they best work and what they need to do that. And we're all different. So
setting them up for an environment that's successful.
And getting them to help figure that out. Don't just observe and say, well, you should be doing this. It's just like, you're working here and there's people around. Is that distracting you, or are you finding you're getting more done?
Yeah.
Involve them in the process.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think as parents too, exactly what you just said, we need to involve them in all sorts of conversations and experiences and things like that. Sometimes I sometimes forget to involve them in a conversation about, do we want to do this on Saturday or do that on Saturday, or, who's going to help at the grocery store? Those kind of conversations tend to forget to include them in those conversations sometimes. And I think those are helpful.
Well, they are. And if they were adults and they would be offended if they were friends, they'd be offended. You're making plans and you're not including me.
Or asking me what I want.
Yeah. You're not including me in the decision-making process.
Absolutely. Well, these have been all really great tips, Lynn, to help our kids set them up for success as they go through school and as they are going on to college. And oh my gosh. And now tell me a little bit about your vision and your mission with helping parents of college students that, have dropped out or are struggling and are going back into school. Tell us a little bit about the work you do there before we let you go.
Okay. So I've identified 9 different reasons or 9 different keys to college success. And one of them is that their parents went to college. So if you haven't done that, set a good example. Even go to night school. Just do something that says learning is an important thing and it's fun to do. My focus is on college confidence. I will help kids learn to speak up for themselves, to raise their hands, to answer questions, to not stammer and stutter and hold their head down so that they won't be called on. And then now I'm seeing that there's a lot of demand for doing presentations in class, in college and university. And some students avoid those courses. Some students they do them, but they are anxious throughout the whole thing. And some of them are so anxious, they don't even show up for them and lose the grade. So that's the area that I'm focusing on. But I am gathering a cohort of people who can identify or who can help with the other areas. So, quick, easy meals that they can make that are cheap. Because sometimes people forget to eat. And again, Gail Swift, the Colby Report, you can do Colby assessments. Mental health problems. And there's some people who have committed suicide in their first year of school because they weren't mentally prepared to do that. So mental health professionals are a part of my cohort too. So I just want to be the go-to person that parents can come to, that young adults can come to, and help them find their way, find themselves, know themselves, and be the best person that they can be for themselves and for this planet.
Oh, I love that. And if we all helped our kids do that, oh my gosh, what a difference this planet would be.
Oh gosh.
Right.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Lynn, for the work that you're doing. And thank you for sharing with us today on Blissful Parenting. It's been fabulous. Where can our Blissful Parents reach out and find out more information about you?
Well, I am on Facebook. My voice counts too, or hashtag MVC2. And my website is myvoicecounts2.com, and it's Lynn at myvoicecounts2.com. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Easy peasy then to find you. My voice counts
Yes.
too. You guys got to remember that. And then you're good to go. You will find Lynn there. All right, Lynn. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Blissful Parenting podcast. And Blissful Parents, go out there and have a wonderful week. We'll see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks, Michelle.